I'm Matt Carpenter, the Performing Arts Director for Delaware Valley Arts Alliance, and I would like to open today's ceremony with a poem from our former National Poet Laureate from 2001 to 2003, Billy Collins. This poem is called The Trouble with Poetry. The trouble with poetry, I realized, as I walked along a beach one night, cold Florida sand under my bare feet, a show of stars in the sky. The trouble with poetry is that it encourages the writing of more poetry. More guppies crowding the fish tank, more baby rabbits hopping out of their mothers into the dewy grass. How will it ever end? Unless the day finally arrives when we have compared everything in the world to everything else in the world. And there is nothing left to do but quietly close our notebooks and sit with our hands folded on our desks. Poetry fills me with joy, and I rise like a feather in the wind. Poetry fills me with sorrow, and I sink like a chain flung from a bridge. But mostly, poetry fills me with the urge to write more poetry. I sit in the dark and wait for a little flame to appear at the tip of my pencil. And along with that, the longing to steal, to break into the poems of others with a flashlight and a ski mask. And what an unmerry band of thieves we are. Cut purses, common shoplifters, I thought to myself, as a cold wave swirled around my feet, and the lighthouse moved its megaphone over the sea, which is an image I stole directly from Lawrence Ferlinghetti, to be perfectly honest for a moment. The bicycling poet of San Francisco, whose little amusement park of a book I carried in my side pocket of my uniform, up and down the treacherous halls of high school.
Hi everyone, my name is Mary Paige Lane-Krause. I'm the director of this library, but I also am the president of the Sullivan Library Alliance. And I just wanted to let you know that this whole process of having a poet laureate was brought about by the Sullivan Library Alliance. So I just wanted to let you know what we're about. We represent the 9 public libraries in Sullivan County. There are 11 physical buildings. And the founder of the Sullivan Public Library Alliance, Ira Siren, is actually right here. Originally, I think our mission was to sort of seek out improvements in technology, because that was like 20 years ago. But our mission has become to support, promote, advance, and advocate for public library services. And SUPLA also provides a vehicle for our members to exchange ideas, share mutual concerns, and educate our libraries to better serve our communities. So to that end, in the last couple of years, one of the things we did was create the first, and it will be a biannual Sullivan County Youth Book Festival. So I don't know if you were there, it was a few weeks ago. And it'll be back in 2021, so if you missed the first one, you have to make it in 2021. Saturday, Memorial Day weekend in 2021. We also have a project where we bought several 3D printers that we share amongst our libraries. I'm sure if you're wherever you are in the county, some libraries are bigger and have bigger budgets and some are smaller. So this is a way for all the libraries to be able to share technologies like that they wouldn't be able to get on their own. We also created a library trail map that I was going to grab so you can see where all the libraries are in the county through the Sullivan County Business Association. And we're currently working on developing a countywide library delivery by mail program. So the people that can't physically get into their libraries will be able to send things through the postal mail. And the last thing we're working on is really raising awareness about the 2020 census and how important that is that people participate in that and why. So that is what the Public Library Alliance is about. And I just want to say that if you look at the back, this is a 2-part program today. We have the inside here, we have the Poet Laureate being recognized, and outside afterwards we'll be unveiling the village dove and the dove trail, the association dove trail. So thank you for coming, and please come back in afterwards for refreshments. Everybody's welcome to do that. Okay?
Thank you, Mary Paige. to me a couple different people and said, we really ought to have a poet laureate for Unveiling. And that seemed a reasonable idea. So we got together some interested people, some English teachers, a school administrator, town councilwoman, and librarians. And we made it happen through a year of planning and selection. Susan and Stephen Ernie were selected as Town of Unveiling Poets Laureate for 2017-2018. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here today. But they were involved with this process. And they were out and about at many different events. They were playing music, which they did as well as reading their poetry. They developed art installations that connected with poetry. They were at a school in Woodsboro. So that was really fun. We went out to try to do it again to get a second term for our poet laureate. We only got one out. So we said, okay, well, we need to look at the bigger picture. And we went to SUPLA, Sullivan Public Library Alliance, and said, would you take this on as a countywide initiative, the librarians agreed. So here we are. And it's been an exciting time. Lynn Skolnick is nodding supportively. She's been involved from the beginning. Thank you, Lynn. So the process this time around was a two-level process. We had a number of judges, five judges who were writers, English teachers, and representatives of UBAA and Casper Art Alliance who were involved with the judging first in a blind process where they did not know whose poems they were reading. They read 3 poems and a statement of interest from each candidate. If I didn't say it, we had 7 applicants, 7 really good applicants. And then the second level of judging, where 5 different people took the top 3 ranked from the first level of judging and have conducted a live interview with each of those. I want to back up for a second and say that we owe a lot of gratitude to our fiscal sponsors, Delaware Valley Arts Alliance, through their Arts Decentralization Granting Program. Was the primary fiscal sponsor and the reason that we can present the county poet laureate with an honorarium to cover her expenses for the year. And also additional funding from Catskill Art Alliance and Bethel Center for the Arts, Bethelwood Center for the Arts, and then we also have emotional support from, in the form of written letters from the Woodsboro Art Alliance and the Sunshine Hall Free Library Friends. And I neglected to say there was also financial support from the Madam McCain Friends of the Library and the E.D. Crawford Friends of the Library. So all around we were trying to reach out and bring on board a lot of organizations. And hopefully as we go forward there will be more arts groups and more sections of the county involved in the planning and the judging and in the financial support of this project. So we felt really good about the process, and it wasn't easy, not to diminish Mark's talent in any way, but it wasn't an easy process. We had a lot of good applicants. So I'm really happy to say that, and we look forward to starting the planning for the next round as well. So our country has a poet laureate, currently Tracy K. Smith, formerly Julie Collins, and going back. Our state, as of 1985, New York State has a poet laureate. Currently is Alicia Oster, which is from Manhattan, for that area. And now we as county have a poet laureate. So we're pretty excited about that. And at this time, I'd like to call up Mark Fletcher, who has been selected as our 2019-2020 poet laureate for Sullivan County.
Great.
I don't have a laurel to wear.
I don't get a fancy hat or a pin or anything.
See, pin.
A pin? I went into this blind.
But I like the idea of the laurel wreath.
Yeah,
So-
that would be nice.
So, suggestions for next time around?
You can get a lyre or something like that, so you can hand off.
That'd be nice, yeah. But then you have to wear a
Who says I don't have? All right,
Mark Blackford.
very cool, so I can wear this. All right.
Wherever you go.
Awesome.
We were excited when Mark was selected to hear that he really did plan to be all over the county this year. So look for him in events, venues, schools throughout the county. You never know where he's gonna show up, we'll all be surprised. By the way it works from here on in is Mark is kind of an independent agent. There's nobody, no publicity person in the background. So it's up to him, and I'm sure you'll all be pleasantly surprised as he becomes the, maybe not an evangelist, but at least an advocate for poetry. Maybe an evangelist throughout the county. And I'm not gonna give you any background yet because is Max?
That's me.
Max
Sorry, I
is
was
here,
late.
so
Sorry about
no
that.
problem. But when you do come up, as a process of handing off your certificate, there's some information about Mark's background, so I'm gonna let you
Oh,
cover
sure.
that. Okay, so besides that, I also have a couple of other things to give you. The name tag for identification purposes, the stipend, did you guys?
Nice.
And in lieu of a plaque, what we decided to do in Mark's honor was to frame one of his poems, a poem of his choice, and this is a sample of what it's going to look like. This isn't necessarily the poem he's going to use. And it's going to be, there are going to be probably 12 different copies of this around the county in each of the libraries and in the arts organizations that support this effort as well. You'll find a framed poem either on the wall or something. So that's going to stay here, but that's a sample of what it's going to look like. So, and actually before I call Max up to make a presentation from somebody in Metzger's office, we have a surprise visitor in Sullivan County. So let's have you come up.
I would say I recognize you, but I remember you when you were on the baseball field with my son Jacob.
Yes.
His brother is a very, very good friend of my son Jacob, so congratulations. And we have from the New York State Assembly a certificate of merit for Mark Blackford, Poet Laureate. Congratulations. And you know what? I remember being in like 2nd and 3rd grade, and I went to a Catholic school in the Bronx. And we used to memorize poetry all the time, ones by Robert Louis Stevenson, and I still remember them to this day. And it's wonderful to see poetry come alive again. It really is, because I remember that was like the first time that I ever spoke in public, when you had to recite a poem in your classroom. And it really was wonderful. So congratulations, and keep doing what you're doing.
Just for the sake of it, we have the certificate, which I'm sure I will have my daughter frame and decorate when I get home. Anyways,
Hello, everyone. So as was said, the Senator Jen Metzger, sent me down to present a proclamation. She's sorry she can't be here herself. This is such a great idea and a good event to have a poet laureate for Sullivan County. I'll just read the proclamation, which gives some biographical details about you too.
so the state knows about it.
Federal government. Congratulating Mark Blackford upon the occasion of becoming the first Sullivan County Poet Laureate. Forgive my congestion. Whereas it is the duty of the Senator to commemorate and recognize certain community milestones celebrated by residents and organizations of this great Empire State, and whereas through his diligence and rigorous efforts, Mark Blackford has achieved the distinguished and prestigious title of Poet Laureate, the inauguration ceremony being held on Saturday, June 15, 2019 at the E.B. Crawford Library in Monticello, New York. And whereas the Poet Laureate position is sponsored by the Sullivan County Public Library Alliance with financial support from the Delaware Valley Arts Alliance's Arts for Sullivan Decentralization Community Grants Program, the Catskill Art Society, Friends of the Advocating Library, Friends of the E.B. Crawford Library, and Lynn Skolnick. And whereas Mark Blackford was selected from 7 candidates through a double judging process that involved the first panel judging blindly and a second panel interviewing candidates, whereas the Sullivan County Poet Laureate will serve a 1-year term from June 1st, 2019 to May 31st, 2020, and whereas the Sullivan County Poet Laureate is expected to bring his or her poetry to venues, groups, organizations, and schools throughout the county during this time. Whereas it is with our continued commitment and devotion to the arts, such as poetry, that our communities may flourish. Whereas this outstanding individual has been committed to the art of poetry for many years, has taught English to high school students, has performed with the Calling All Poets series out of New Paltz, has been known to give poetry readings in Woodstock and wherever the mood strikes him, and has been published in the River Reporter, Odradek, Waymark, Voices of the Valley, and the CAPS Anthology, and whereas this award is a credit to his hard work, his passion for the arts in his community, and there's no doubt that his tenure as Sullivan County Poet Laureate will be filled with accomplishments of equal importance. Now, therefore, be proclaimed that I, New York State Senator Jen Metzger, hereby congratulate Mark Blackford upon receiving the high honor of Sullivan County Poet Laureate. Be it further proclaimed that a copy of this proclamation be transmitted to Mark Blackford on the occasion of his inauguration on Saturday, June 15th. So here you go.
I really don't have enough frames for this.
You're gonna have to guess.
I'm going to have to, yes.
Thank you, Max. And our guest speaker, your name and contact, please.
Mark Olson, Rainbow. Here, you want to sit down, but I told you it would be short.
Yeah, I will sit for this one.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm going to situate myself exactly where I did in class now.
Actually, you're a little over
To the left, yeah.
Okay, I am a poetry evangelist, and we wouldn't be here today if poetry did not have the power to transform lives. It has transformed Mark's life as we see evidenced here today. I first got to know Mark when he was a student in my 11th grade English class. Believe it or not, he was shorter than me. Every student who passes through my 11th grade English class remembers my poetry project. I have seen students' souls light up when they realize that poetry can speak directly to their hearts. This probably isn't true, but I'd like to believe that Mark got his poetry start in my English class. I remember when Mark graduated from college and made a point to come back to Monticello High School to tell me that he received his degree in creative writing. I had no idea. It is very rare for students who show talent in creative writing to continue on in the field. They are often told to study something that will make them money, and they should write as a hobby. It takes a courageous spirit, which Mark embodies, to understand not pursuing their passion for writing would be folly. Mark has generously given his time by coming into my classroom and sharing his passion with my students. Mark connects with students in a unique and meaningful way. You'll indulge me, I want to tell you one story about one of those students that Mark doesn't even know about. I had a student, and I will just call him John, who had gone through a very difficult year. He had a drug problem and was unsuccessfully involved in rehab. Most of the time he slept through my class. His grades were almost non-existent. He was depressed and disconnected from life. Then when he was about as low as he could get, his father committed suicide. A month after that, Mark came into my class to read and talk to my students about poetry. When Mark began to read, John's head was down like it always was. Slowly, I watched his head come up. Then he sat upright. Finally, he began to listen closely. The day after Mark read to my class, John came to me and said, "Is that poetry dude coming in again?" John asked me for some poetry books, which I gladly gave him. It took Mark sharing his poetry to connect John with his life again. In closing, I told you that was right, I want to reach out to all of you to challenge you to help Mark this year connect people with poetry. As I said, poetry can help transform lives, and we would like to make Mark's tenure as Sullivan County's first Poet Laureate successful. If you are a teacher, invite Mark into your classroom. If you have a cafe, restaurant, or coffee shop, host a poetry reading and invite Mark to be the featured reader. If you are part of a radio station, give Mark some airtime, interview him, and let him connect your listeners to poetry. If you work for a newspaper or a magazine, write a featured reader about the new Poet Laureate. Set aside some time at arts festivals for poetry. If you're part of a club, invite Mark to be the guest speaker. I hope every library in the county will host a reading where Mark is the feature. Mark is the start of something wonderful here in Sullivan County. Help him transform the hearts and minds of people throughout the county. Congratulations, Mark. Sullivan County is lucky to have you.
Mark, you have a couple poems to share with us?
I do.
Just happens to have.
Yeah, I don't carry around the notebook for no particular reason at all. But, it's before I start in on that, I'll be relatively brief, but I want to thank everybody for showing up. Thanks to the Delaware Valley Arts Alliance, Pasco Art Society, Sullivan Public Library Alliance for, their contributions and their efforts to make something like this happen. Since I moved back to Sullivan County from North Carolina, where I was working as a high school English teacher and did not realize that my credentials would not translate to New York State. You learn things as you go. I've been waiting for something like this to happen, and in working with poet laureates from other neighboring counties, such as Robert Milby in Orange County, Poet Gold in Dutchess County, I've just been waiting and wondering when's this going to happen in Sullivan. And when it popped up, I said, well, on a whim, I'm going to give it a shot. I was shocked to see that I had actually been selected, and it was more shocking because I had just received an alert that there was a tornado warning. So we were cowering as a family in my basement, and suddenly I get an email, and I break out laughing, and now my daughter thinks everything's going to plan. So, but it was fun to. It was great to just have that feeling and know that that my work and just I guess myself was considered worthy of a title, and the first of this title in Sullivan County. And I do intend to bring everything I can to this, and I promise, as Peggy said, that to show up as unannounced as possible and be present and make myself as available as I can, for the sake of sharing, not just the art, but the passion in the crafts. When I went into a creative writing program, the first thing I was told was, we were sat down in a circle, and our mentor looked at us and said, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to build an altar. And you're going to build that altar in the name of this craft. And you're going to place that altar in your heart. No matter where you go, you're going to go back to that altar, to this craft. You will be devoted to it. You will remain devoted to it, no matter what happens in your life, no matter where you go. This is your ground. This is where you return. And I took that very seriously, and I want to be able to give that to as many as I possibly can, in the county. And I just want to thank you all for showing up. It's nice, and at the same time, a little bit frightening to actually look out and recognize so many people from just growing up in this town and then working in this town beyond that. And thank you, Tom. Thank you, Carmen, for coming out. Bob, thank you for being here. Ira, thank you for coming. Donnie, I didn't even know you knew this was happening. We're all on the internet, aren't we? That's right. So, well, I know you guys probably didn't come here just to listen to me talk. We have other things we have to do. So I figured I didn't bring that many pieces with me because I know we have to go outside and do the unveiling. But I figured the best thing I could probably do is, as a sample, just read the poems that I had sent, for consideration. And an additional piece. The fun that I have when it comes to poetry is I always make the mistake when I start writing of writing with an ending in mind, and it never ends up the way I anticipate it. And there's a little bit of an excitement and a thrill that comes with that, as much as there is frustration, because you're expecting something, you get something else. And that's really where the beauty, especially in poetry, comes from, is you think you're going to make something, and in turn you make something that's completely different, and the end result is even more wonderful than you could have ever imagined your result being. So, that being said, we'll start off with a poem called Coffee, begins with a quote from the French poet Jacques Prévert, which reads, "Et moi j'ai pris ma tête dans ma main et j'ai pleuré." Loosely translated, "Me, I took my head into my hands and I wept." He pours the same stale coffee into the same stained mug, from the same stained carafe, the same way he does every day. His choreographed morning ritual he never quite gets right. He pours a mug for her too. He always does. He splashes milk into her mug, but only hers, only a splash. And with the little spoon who hides and the little bowl who sits like a piece of struck scenery in a ring engraved on the countertop next to the coffee pot's imprint, he adds sugar to both and stirs. Walking from the kitchen to the porch, he takes out a cigarette. He throws one to her too, without a word, without looking. She catches it, without looking, without a word, and waits impatiently as he fumbles in his pockets to find her a light. He blows a smoke ring, gingerly sipping his coffee as she sips, sours, and spits out the beverage, sloshing the contents of her cup onto the concrete that they share. And without a word, he flicks away a cylinder of ash, turns to face her, smothers the ember in the puddle at their feet. It's not all grim. This one I was asked to read when I came to the interview, because they wanted a poem for Sullivan County. So I gave them this. It was not the most spirited of poems, but it is called Postcards, and it's written for the Monticello Trading Post, which I worked at through the course of my high school and college career. In the back corner of a hardware store with no tools, there sits a rack of postcards. Scenic photos fixed to salutations covered with a film of dust nobody cares to clean in order to keep the colors from fading. Rainbows of foliage over mountain outcrops, bald eagles flying over the treetops, lakes and streams over which pass bridges covered in red, white, black, and blue bruised timbers. Meticulously photoshopped cars pass through them, going eastbound, no doubt, far from here. My boss won't toss them. God forbid, she says. God forbid a tourist comes in. I haven't seen one in years. Even if there were, this has all been seen. There's nothing more here worthy of a glossy postcard. No. When they come, no, if they ever come again, I want them to see the wetlands of the Bashakill replaced with West Broadway crumbling. An old man deep in the depths of senility, pantsless, walking around with a woodblock saying Happy Holidays in September. Signs on storefronts stating we promise to be fully stocked next week. We're sorry. A grown man leaning over a ladder as I do over my desk, struggling to find an end to our sentence. And I remember my manager changing the sign outside of the Trading Post to that in the year before it closed. All right, here we go. We'll bring it up a little bit. This was actually written based on experiences I had while I was at camp along the 10-Mile River, because anybody who lived in Sullivan County and was in Boy Scouts ended up spending a week in Narrowsburg at some point in their life. So it's called nature-based pornography. Don't have to worry. All right. It was as if some teenage wet dream had turned torrential flood, flowing forth from the tip of my pitched tent far beyond the safety of my sleeping bag. I'm shocked awake to lightning coursing through my canvas veins, thunder pulsing like a heartbeat from the clam of my skin to the core of my pot. I'm thinking, man, she's given it her all. Her rain so heady, her wind so heavy. My tent has become a psycho circus. The flaps pulling at their poles like anxious clothing yearning to be torn off, to reveal this high voltage spectacle hanging over my head. A wet tease, striptease until this moment my eyes had yet to see. This is the greatest show on earth, it's all mine. There's no fee. I undo the knots and let loose my cover. Mother Nature is sexy when she's angry. I have one more I have one more, actually 2 more pieces. I made the decision when I was, when I got the email stating that I was selected, I was like, this is awesome. And then I was like, oh crap, I have to write stuff. So I said to myself, I was like, this is fine. I said, this is what I do. I could be productive. I've got a couple of weeks. I could put together a poem. And then the day after I realized I had been selected, my job gave me notice that I was going to be in New York City for training. So these past 2 weeks, I've been a resident of Brooklyn and sitting in classrooms all day long. And I've tried my best to, and then I was asked if I could write something for the Unveiling. So I was working as best as I could to be as productive as possible and get these poems written. And I finished this one up probably about 10 minutes before I left my house to come here. So we're gonna give this a shot. This is called Self-Portrait as a Message in a Bottle, or a card for my daughter on her 6th birthday. When I was your age, I made whole universes on my ceiling from stickers of stars and planets and broadcast like a beacon into the void, the low hum of arguing in the next room enough to stifle my thinking if this would end happily. At twice your age, my parents cut from paper a satellite. They named it Mark. They filled it with questions and confusion and jettisoned it without explanation to find answers on its own. In the vacuum of space, my message drifts aimless, waiting for direction, or something, or anything. The first time you asked me if a movie had a happy ending, you were 3. It was The Lion King. Simba had yet to find his father among the ruin of the stampede. I stowed away your question like smuggled rum. That day, I made the mistake of telling you to have hope before leaving to the kitchen, to wrap myself up like a cry for help and climb inside a bottle, pulling down the stopper behind me. I let the movie run its course. I let you realize on your own. And at the end, you set out like an astronaut to find me among the ruin. Your mission, to show me what hope is. Taking in my abandoned satellite, your face explodes like a supernova into a smile, a universe you've directed me to explore. I look around in wonder, watching the cracks spreading across the glass. The last piece I have is going to be for the Unveiling. So, when we're set for that, we're good to go.
Do you want to do it outside, or?
We can do it outside if you'd like. It is
You
a nice
have a
sunny
pretty
day.
booming voice. I think you can compete with the trucks or whatever might be going on, so.
Huh?
Yeah.
We can do it if we want to do that. If we all feel like stepping out of the doors here.
Yeah,
Yes.
want to head out for
Alright.
that? All right.